Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. And I think it's fair to ask at this point, you get great crowds. You have enough, you do those money bombs, you get all that money, and yet you don't have a win, and it seems almost impossible to envision a presidential nominee that can't win in a state somewhere. Look ahead for me and tell me where you can win.
Well, it all depends on how you measure winning. If you measure whether or not we're winning the maximum number of delegates in states, we actually have had wins, even though the final tally's not in. But that's what really counts. So some of these straw votes are straw votes, and sometimes they get very confused in counting votes. Take Iowa, for instance. We think we're going to have the most delegates out of Iowa. And the same thing probably about Maine. And they're still very confused up there on actually what is going on with the popular vote. But I know there's a lot of political benefit to that. But the bottom line is who's going to get the delegates, and we think we're doing pretty good. And it seems like our momentum is just picking up. I am just actually shocked at the tremendous turnouts we've had. We've been out on the road. We had eight functions here in the last 3 days. We've had 14,000 people turn out, and the enthusiasm seems to be growing. I know it's missing the national TV, but if anybody travels with us, they know something very special is going on in the frustration level. So those others who are at the top now doesn't mean they're going to stay there, not the way this campaign's been going.
The question, though, is, and yes, you've certainly proven that you can get those enthusiastic crowds. I've seen them. You see them all the time, obviously. But the question, I guess, is, does Ron Paul have a ceiling? Because your line in the polls pretty much steady from September, around 15%. It's just hard to see how you put together enough delegates to win the nomination. You could perhaps influence the nomination, but in your heart of hearts, do you have a place where you think, if I can't do it here, I'm going to have to rethink this?
Well, you don't know until the end. I use the track analogy. I used to run very hard, and I wasn't deciding in my own mind who's going to win and who's going to be in second place. I just run real hard. So that's to be decided, later on. But I just think there's every reason to believe that this momentum will continue, because it is relatively early. I know in a week or so there's going to be a big difference, but no, there's every reason to believe that we're going to be in a very good position, and we have to be optimistic. We know exactly what the odds are, but nobody actually knows the future. You know that.
Absolutely no. Certainly, I don't. Do you foresee yourself taking this all the way into August, even if you get to a point where you think, okay, the mathematics don't add up to a nomination for me? Do you foresee yourself taking the delegates you do have and going to the convention in August?
Well, yeah, because right now we don't know when the end is, whether it's going to be May, June, July, or August. So I have to assume that it will go into August, because we're not going to lock it up in May, obviously. So we just have to, wait and see. So that, in my mind, I anticipate it's going to go on for a while. Okay. And that's certainly what the supporters want me to.
Of your rivals. Rick Santorum has had quite the rise in the polls. Do you believe today, from what you see, that Rick Santorum can beat President Obama in November?
Well, no, I don't see how that's possible. And this whole idea about that whole talking about these social issues and who's going to pay for birth control pills, I'm worrying about, the undermining of our civil liberties, the constant wars going on, the debt of, $16 trillion. And they're worrying about birth control pills, and here he wants to, control people's social and lives. At the same time, he voted for Planned Parenthood. I mean, I don't see how anybody can get away with that inconsistency, pretending he's a conservative. And his voting record is, I think, from my viewpoint, an atrocious voting record, how liberal he's been in all the things he's voted for over the many years he was in the Senate and in the House.
Are you uncomfortable? Certainly Rick Santorum is the one who's been in the forefront of some of this talk on social issues, but there have been others in the race. Are you uncomfortable with this talk about social issues? Do you consider it a winning area for Republicans in November?
No, I think it's a losing position. I mean, I talk about it because I have a precise understanding of how difficult problems should be solved, and they're not to be at the national level. We're not supposed to nationalize these problems. The founders were very clear that problems like this, if there needs to be legislation of sorts, the states have the right to write the legislation that they so choose. And that solves a lot of our problems. I mean, the whole idea that it's a national issue on who has to pay for birth control pills, but of course that comes from the fact that it's a national mandate that the government controls insurance programs. Insurance is, to have true insurance, you have to have that done in the marketplace. You can't have that done by government.
And quickly, if I could ask you, there's been a lot of talk that you and Mitt Romney seem to have a sort of a mutual truce going on. Can we take that as you believing that Mitt Romney would be, if it's not yourself, a good presidential nominee for the Republican Party?
Well, there's not much, on issues that we agree on, whether it's foreign policy or, the personal liberties issue or it's probably on taxes we might have an agreement. But, no, I think they're all the same, in the same group. But the only thing that I mention when people sort of press me on that is management style. I think he certainly would have a more, acceptable management style when you consider what I have seen and experienced from the other two candidates. I don't think they qualified there. But as far as issues goes, I'm uncomfortable with all three of them. I think they're the status quo, and they're not changing. They don't want to really change anything.
That's what I'm offering. My guess is we will be talking to you again. Thank you so much, Congressman Ron Paul, presidential candidate Ron Paul. We appreciate it. See you down the road.